At a state penitentiary in New Jersey, Beckett lies in his cell, just 4 hours away from execution. Father James, a prison chaplain, visits him. Gently asking how he is feeling, Beckett casually mentions that he was served cheesecake instead of the chocolate dessert he had requested, then adds that he's otherwise fine. But Father James reminds him that this is his last opportunity to speak. He asks if Beckett would like to share anything. After a pause, Beckett admits that while people may have heard stories about him, the truth is far more compelling and far more tragic. Then he begins telling his story. Years ago, Beckett's mother, Mary Redfellow, part of the $19 billion Redfellow fortune, notices Gary, a cellist, at one of her parties. And they fall in love at first sight. Soon after, Mary becomes pregnant with Beckett. However, Mary's father, Whitelaw, is enraged that his 18-year-old daughter is expecting and gives her an ultimatum: end the pregnancy or be cut off from the family entirely. Mary refuses and leaves Huntington, New York, and moves to New Jersey. But tragedy strikes when Gary dies of a pulmonary embolism during Beckett's birth. Determined to give her son a good life, Mary takes a job at the Department of Motor Vehicles. One day, she tells young Beckett that, even though they were kicked out of the family, they are still entitled to the inheritance, because his grandfather signed a contract designed to reduce taxes on assets like boats and planes, meaning the fortune goes to the older relatives first. With 7 people ahead of him, Beckett can only wait. Despite their financial struggles, Mary raises Beckett with the culture, style, and class of a high-born young man. Beckett eventually falls in love with his classmate Julia, a wealthy socialite he believes is his perfect match. One day at her birthday party, Julia approaches him, surprised to see him there. When Beckett tells her that her mother invited him, she asks where he lives. The moment he says Belleville Township, she makes a dismissive remark about it being a poor neighborhood. Beckett responds that his situation is temporary and mentions about his future inheritance. Over time, Julia begins to fall for Beckett as well. Not long after, Mary falls seriously ill. On her deathbed, she tells Beckett that he deserves more, that something was taken from him. She makes him promise never to give up until he has the right kind of life. Mary's final wish is to be buried in the Redfellow Mausoleum in Huntington. But her father ignored the request, and she is instead buried in East Orange. Still devastated by his mother's death, Beckett goes to confront his family and claim his rightful place. Instead, he receives nothing more than a cold typed letter delivered by a servant, stating that they cannot help him. After that, Beckett is bounced around the foster care system, and his relationship with Julia falls apart. Years pass. Beckett now works at a men's clothing store, selling suits. Every day, he keeps track of the Redfellow family, only to grow increasingly frustrated. Everyone is still alive. While working, he spots Julia. He instinctively looks away, but she calls out,
I can't believe it's
Beckett
you.
smiles. She asks if he still lives in Belleville Township. He nods, then asks if she's still in Montclair. She says yes, and adds that she'd lived in London and Dubai before coming back. Gathering some courage, Beckett asks if she'd like to grab a drink. She smiles and tells him she's engaged to Lyle, one of their former classmates. Before leaving, Julia asks what happened to the Redfellow family fortune. Beckett says he'll inherit it one day. She laughs and jokingly tells him to give her a call when he's killed them all. Julia mentions about Beckett to Lyle, who mocks him, saying it's no surprise he works at a place like this. Later, Beckett's mind replays what his mother once told him.
I want you to promise me something. You won't quit until you have the right kind of life.
He knows there are 7 Redfellows ahead of him in line for the inheritance, and none of them helped him or his mother. Slowly, a dark idea begins to take shape in his mind. What if he removed them himself? The first on the list is Taylor, a broker at his father's investment firm. Over the next few days, Beckett wonders if he could really go through with killing or if guilt would crush him and force him to confess. Later, Beckett's manager informs him that he's being transferred to a warehouse in Jersey City. Beckett protests, arguing that he works hard and deserves better. With a sigh, the manager explains that their boss's son has dropped out of college and will be taking Beckett's position. Frustrated, Beckett quits. He begins following Taylor, studying his every move. At one of Taylor's house parties, Beckett keeps his distance, watching carefully, looking for a chance to get him alone. Then, he spots an opportunity. Taylor rides out on a jet ski toward a boat, and Beckett follows. On the boat, Taylor notices him. He casually mentions that the boat is low on ethanol and asks Beckett to grab the anchor and call Baywatch. Beckett grabs the rope, ties it to Taylor's ankle, and then connects the other end to the boat's anchor. For a moment, he hesitates. Suddenly, Taylor coughs, startling him. Later, Beckett attends Taylor's funeral. There, he meets his uncle Warren. Beckett offers his condolences. Warren nods and asks his name. Beckett introduces himself as Mary's son, his nephew. Warren takes him to a bar and speaks proudly of Mary, saying that even at 18, she was brave enough to stand up to Whitelaw. He then admits he regrets not staying in touch with Mary or Beckett. Beckett admits he wishes he had the chance to know Taylor better. Warren sighs and confesses that he feels responsible for Taylor's death, regretting that he wasn't there when Taylor began losing control with parties and drugs. Warren then asks Beckett what he does. Beckett says he's currently unemployed, so Warren offers him Taylor's job, but Beckett points out that he isn't qualified. Warren shrugs, calling it nepotism, and adding that he should have helped Beckett long ago, so he's doing it now. This was never part of Beckett's plan, but he accepts the job anyway. On his first day as a financial broker at W&R, Beckett feels overwhelmed, but as the weeks pass, he learns the language of trading, knowledge he hopes to put to use when he eventually inherits the fortune.
Is this Beckett Redfellow, a new hire at W&R?
Beckett smiles and asks how married life has been. She says she has just returned from her honeymoon. Then she brings up how he asked her out for a drink a year ago and how she had turned him down.
Timing.
She tells him not to be embarrassed and encourages him to try again. So he does. Julia pauses, then reminds him that she's married and ends the call. Beckett moves on to his next target, Noah, a photography artist. This time, Beckett feels more comfortable with the idea of killing. After getting away with Taylor's murder, and even being rewarded for it, his hesitation begins to fade. Having followed Noah for a while, he attends one of his art shows. Beckett pretends to admire one of his photographs, calling it impressive. Noah notices and approaches him. Beckett introduces himself as his huge fan, then reveals that they are cousins.
Nice, dude. That is grimy as fuck.
Noah takes him to his house and shows him the photo development room, saying it's where all the magic happens. He offers Beckett a cigarette, but Beckett declines. Noah mentions that his girlfriend, Ruth, doesn't like him smoking. Just then, Ruth calls out for him from outside. He asks Beckett to keep it a secret, but she quickly finds out when she kisses him. She scolds him. He shrugs and introduces Beckett, explaining that they met at the show and that he's also his cousin. Ruth invites Beckett to join them for dinner. During the meal, she casually asks what he does. Beckett replies that he works in finance. She questions why he chose that field, and he says he hopes it will pay off one day. She then asks what he plans to do when it does. Beckett laughs, and Noah tells her to stop being weird with their guest. She apologizes, but Beckett brushes it off and asks what she does instead. Ruth says she works in denim, but is switching careers to teach high school literature. Beckett asks what books she would teach. She mentions Dickens and David Copperfield. The two bond over their shared love of literature, while Noah laughs and calls them nerds. Later, Ruth invites Beckett to come back on Thursday for dinner.
Group thing.
Sure.
As the days pass, Beckett thinks about how to kill Noah. Then an idea hits him when Warren mentions that it's only a matter of time before the investors find out, like a ticking time bomb. Thursday arrives. At dinner, Noah casually says that San Francisco is the worst city. Ruth disagrees, saying it's perfect for raising kids, with mountains and the ocean.
You want kids?
She tells him maybe one day, but Noah quickly adds that he hates kids. In the middle of it all, Beckett excuses himself and heads to the photo development room. He adds sulfur and potassium chloride to the photographic stop bath, turning it into something essentially like dynamite. One spark, and the entire room could explode. To avoid suspicion, he left the bottle under the sink earlier. So if the police investigate, they'll think Noah simply made a careless mistake with his cleaning supplies.
The final ingredient would be a single spark, and no one would ever question where that came from.
Noah offers to check on Beckett. When Noah finds him, Beckett casually says he loves his work so much that he was thinking of stealing the piece. Amused, Noah signs it and hands it to him. Beckett deliberately leaves his coat behind and says goodbye to Ruth. Moments later, she follows him outside. Without hesitation, Beckett kisses her, and 8 minutes later, Noah is dead. Beckett attends Noah's funeral. Though he wants to pick up where he and Ruth left off, he realizes it's too soon. As he is about to leave, 2 FBI agents stop him, Agent Pinfield, and her partner Matthews. Pinfield asks Beckett if he is an heir to the Redfellow estate. He hesitates, initially saying no, then correcting himself. He says he's not aware of it, explaining that his mother was a Redfellow, but they had a falling out. Matthews points out that he attended the funeral. Beckett replies that he was a friend of Noah's and asks why they are questioning him. Pinfield explains that when two members of the same family die one after the other, the Bureau follows certain protocols. The next day, Warren praises Beckett's incredible work at the firm over the past few months. Later, as Beckett waits for a client, Julia walks in instead. She asks if he got his job through hard work or nepotism. Beckett says he's waiting for his client, and Julia reveals that she is the client. She asks him for a loan, explaining that her husband inherited his father's brokerage but didn't manage it well and has used up all the money. Beckett tells her this isn't a bank. He offers to guide her through the proper channels to get the money, but Julia insists she wants something unofficial. Under the table, Beckett stays silent. She picks up the set of keys on the table, but Beckett tells her they're his. She says they need to talk again, then asks if he has heard about Noah and Taylor Redfellow. He shrugs. She remarks that she wonders who's next and says she expects to hear from him soon. After this, Beckett decides to establish stronger alibis since Julia is onto him. He asks a coworker for his suit size. Then, tomorrow afternoon, he heads to the food truck where his coworker usually goes, making sure to stay visible on camera. The third Redfellow in line for the inheritance is Stephen Redfellow, a pastor of a megachurch. Beckett knows that 2 deaths in a row could still be seen as a coincidence, but a third would form a pattern. However, he also knows that Stephen has been indicted twice for money laundering and is currently being sued by his former manager, so if he were to die, no one would suspect Beckett. The next day, Beckett poses as a reporter named Ben Johnson from a Midwest Christian magazine. Stephen nods, saying he knows who he is, and apologizes for not meeting him a month earlier, explaining that he was in Korea opening a new church. Beckett nods and begins the interview, asking Stephen to explain the people in the photos. As Stephen talks, Beckett quietly adds tropane alkaloids to his drink. Stephen continues, saying that because of his wealth and family name, people are always trying to bring him down. He then shows Beckett a samurai sword gifted by the mayor and asks him to feel its sharpness.
Oh, wow. Ow.
But then Stephen reveals that he knows that Ben Johnson retired 8 months ago. Beckett admits the truth, that he is his cousin. Surprised, Stephen asks if he isn't the guy who's notorious for writing hit pieces at the expense of others. Beckett shakes his head. Stephen apologizes, saying he's become paranoid because of his position, and adds that he should have recognized Beckett since they look alike. Shortly after, Stephen suffers a heart attack and dies. The church also declines any further investigation since Stephen was a controversial figure. A week later, Beckett meets Ruth. She reveals that she had actually planned to break up with Noah, but he died before she could. She admits she feels guilty for not being sad and asks if that makes her a terrible person. Beckett shakes his head and says, it just makes her honest. He then asks her out to dinner tomorrow. She agrees, but says she'd prefer something low-key, maybe a home-cooked meal. The next day, Beckett buys groceries and returns home, only to find Julia waiting inside. She reveals that she had taken his apartment key weeks earlier at his office. She asks him why he hasn't been returning her calls. Beckett says he's been busy. She presses him, asking what he's been busy with, saying they've known each other for a long time, but he stays silent. So Julia opens up instead. She tells him her husband has been lying to her for years and that they're now broke. She reminds him of the chemistry they once had. At that moment, the doorbell rings. Beckett quickly pushes Julia out and lies to Ruth, saying the food he made turned out badly. So they go out to a restaurant. Ruth talks about her students, how they all want to be millionaires but none of them want to work for it. Beckett tells her it's good to dream big. She then asks him, if you had $1 million, what would you do? Beckett smiles and says he doesn't know. Then Ruth reflects on her life. She says she always dreamed of being a fashion designer, but deep down, she knew it wouldn't truly make her happy. She had also wanted to be a teacher, yet fear held her back. Now, having become one, she realizes it has brought her more fulfillment than she ever expected. She adds that it's scary to dream small, something no one teaches. Beckett considers stopping, with a new job and a growing relationship with Ruth, but in the end, he decides to continue since he's already good at what he's doing. His next target is his Aunt Cassandra, known for adopting children from around the world. After the recent deaths in the family, she has increased security. However, Beckett discovers the spa she visits every Tuesday has no cameras. He poses as a staff member and offers a teeth whitening service as part of the package.
The special ingredient was carbamide peroxide.
The death is later dismissed with speculation that she may have bought a faulty product abroad while adopting a child. Next on the list is his uncle MacArthur, who owns a large share of the National Air and Space Museum. For fun, he plans expensive trips, even spending $90 million on a trip to the moon. A reporter points out that he is spending so much while his employees don't even have basic health insurance. MacArthur casually replies that he would do it cheaper if he could. During one of his trips, Beckett hands MacArthur a poisoned drink. A week later, he and Ruth go apartment hunting together and find a place they both love. Beckett confesses his love, and Ruth returns it. He tells her he can afford the apartment with a loan from the company.
I liked you when you lived in Newark and took the bus.
Next in line for the inheritance is Warren Redfellow. But by now, Beckett actually respects him and can't bring himself to think about killing him. For the first time, he feels content with life. His relationship with Ruth is going strong, and she's even decided to throw their engagement party at their new apartment. Then one day, Ruth tells him she's been thinking a lot about his family lately. Beckett responds that he is no longer part of it. At work, Beckett is stopped by the FBI agents.
I understand. You said you're not an heir to the estate, is that correct?
As far as I know.
Well, you did a little research and...
Congratulations.
Beckett acts surprised. Matthews then asks where he was on the afternoon of April 10th. Beckett checks his schedule and says he remembers buying a hot dog from a food truck. In reality, it was Ethan. But the alibi holds, and they let him go. Later, during a meeting, the brokers urge Warren to sell their stocks and cut losses before the market crashes. Warren refuses, saying he has spent years earning the trust of shareholders and won't abandon them now. That evening, as they leave work, Warren suddenly faints. Beckett rushes him to the hospital. Weakly, Warren speaks to Beckett. He says he can sense that Beckett is the type of person who chases money relentlessly, and while he is good at it, it comes at a cost. He asks Beckett to look at him. 61 years old with no loved ones, and the only person visiting him right now is Beckett. He tells him to find that person in his own life and love them, because at the end of the day, that's the only work that truly pays. Beckett realizes that the last remaining Redfellow ahead of him is his grandfather, Whitelaw. The next day, Beckett receives a letter from Whitelaw, inviting him to dinner that night. He tells Ruth, but she reminds him that today is the day of their engagement party. He promises to return by 7. When he arrives at his office, Julia is already there. She places a brown package in front of him. Inside are photographs, evidence placing Beckett at multiple crime scenes. She tells him that when she heard about Taylor's drowning, she knew something wasn't right. After all, Taylor had been accepted to Princeton College with a swimming scholarship, so she hired someone to follow Beckett. Beckett asks what she wants. Julia tells him to finish the last Redfellow. Then she demands $300,000, instructing him to deliver it to her husband Lyle's office by 5. If he refuses, she threatens to send the photos to Ruth. She adds that if it weren't for Ruth, she would have asked for something else. After she leaves, he tells one of the brokers to call Fritzer in Vienna and instruct him to sell the P&G shares immediately. He searches for Lyle's office and finally finds him. Snatching the phone, he tells Julia he's there with a check, angrily calling her a sociopathic, conniving bitch. As he signs the check, he remarks that Lyle is about to make a lot of money. But Lyle stops him, saying he won't make a dime since Julia isn't interested in him anymore and plans to leave him. He then adds that Beckett, a bastard, has come a long way. Then he drives straight to the Redfellow estate. At the front door, a guard lets him in and quickly shuts it behind him. Inside, Beckett walks deeper into the house until he sees Whitelaw, approaching him steadily. Whitelaw tells him he canceled the dinner party because of the storm.
But I just couldn't turn you down.
Then he comments on Beckett's rise on the financial ladder, calling it a filthy business. Beckett asks what he means. Whitelaw replies that Beckett must have broken a few heads and crushed some competition along the way. 2 or 3, Beckett replies. He sighs and says that this kind of life isn't for everybody because it would make some people old, tired, and regretful. And that over the years he has learned that what hurts people the most is their conscience, the voice that tells them right from wrong. But if one knows how to turn their head just right, that voice can be reduced to a whisper. He then says, almost wistfully, that Mary was his favorite. Beckett asks why he never helped her. Without answering directly, Whitelaw leads him into a room and shows him an old trench gun that once belonged to Beckett's great-great-uncle. He hands it to Beckett and tells him to take aim, then calmly suggests he should shoot him. Beckett refuses and says he should leave, but when he tries the front door, it's locked. He checks the windows, also locked. Then he hears footsteps. Beckett runs, staying just ahead for a moment, but Whitelaw chases him closely, shouting at him for having the nerve to come to his house to kill him and saying he should have taken the chance to kill him when he had it. Beckett stumbles into a room, finds a bow, and takes aim, but he misses. Whitelaw fires again. When Whitelaw runs out of bullets, Beckett fires another arrow, this time hitting him. Soon after, the police arrive. Beckett tells an officer that he had no prior relationship with his grandfather and that Whitelaw invited him out of nowhere. Then he excuses himself and returns to his apartment. She tells Beckett she can sense he's hiding something, and if he isn't ready to tell her the truth, she's leaving. Beckett wants to confess everything, but instead, he only tells her what she will see on the news. In the end, the police rule Whitelaw's death as self-defense. Soon after, Beckett inherits the Redfellow fortune and is welcomed into New York high society.
The right kind of life. This had to be it, right?
But just as he begins to enjoy his newfound status, the past catches up. The FBI approaches him once more, and this time, they arrest him for the murder of Lyle. The irony isn't lost on Beckett. He is finally caught, yet for a crime he didn't commit. The evidence is damning. Surveillance shows Beckett entering Lyle's office and leaving at 5:03 p.m., just minutes before the estimated time of death, between 5:06 and 5:15. The prosecution presents the murder weapon, a letter opener, with Beckett's fingerprints on it.
I got your checks, you sociopathic, conniving bitch.
Julia is called to testify, as the victim's wife and the first to discover his body. When asked if she loves Beckett, she says yes. When asked if he feels the same, she confidently claims he has been in love with her his entire life. The judge delivers the verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. Beckett is sentenced to death. One day before his execution, Julia comes to visit him. Reluctantly, he takes the phone. She reminds him of a childhood game they used to play, where she would keep a secret and he would try to guess it. Beckett coldly replies that he would rather die than be with her. Unfazed, Julia tells Beckett she has Lyle's suicide note. Beckett asks what she wants. She replies that he has nothing left to offer. Desperate, he begs her to come back. When she does, she demands his inheritance in exchange for the note. With no other option, Beckett signs over everything to her. After that, he requested to speak with a priest. He tells Father James that the reason he appears calm is because he believes Julia will keep her promise. As the priest begins reading a passage about death, Beckett sits quietly, his heart racing as the time of execution draws closer. At the last moment, he is informed that there has been a new development in the case. Beckett is released. Outside, Ruth is waiting. She doesn't say a word. She simply hands him the locket and drives off. In the distance, Beckett sees Julia with her Rolls Royce. He approaches, gets into the car.
I told you this is a tragedy. It's not about me, is it? I think it's about you. With all your values and deep-rooted expectations. But someone once told me that the only thing that can hurt us in life is the voice of our own conscience. If you turn your head just right into the wind, you can make that voice go down to a whisper.